You focus on healing generational trauma. Can you explain what patterns you have observed and how these patterns are passed down?
Patterns, subconscious patterns are formed primarily by watching others in our environment. It doesn't have to mean that someone has forced something upon you and said, "Hey, here's my pattern, take it." It's very different. It's much softer than that, and it's something we pick up on in the environment around us as children. And another premise to that is the fact that we really don't have a conscious mind until about the age of 7. So we don't even have a faculty that says, "Hey, I don't want to believe that." That's what our conscious mind is for. It's kind of our filter. And we don't have that when we're little. So we are even more, I guess, susceptible to just picking up the energy and the patterns in the environment. So that's one big thing that I love to explain to people, because when we're adults and we're facing this generational trauma, uh, ebbs and flows and all of the healing, we just get so frustrated with ourselves and we get really hard on ourselves. And the truth is, it is what it is. This is by human design. Like something has bigger than us has created this. And again, I think that's what points me to being a coach for mothers, is because now I take that period of working as a mother and being with my children so with such honor, because you realize that, wow, these people are literally sponges. It's just whatever I do, they are. And so it's a bit more serious than I think we've ever realized, now that we're in this generation of unpacking that. Um, so that's one thing to keep in mind. I think that's another reason why people feel so deep in healing, is because they're not even necessarily healing their own stuff. They're actually healing patterns that never originated with them. And so it feels dense, it feels heavy. And that's why the support and people like myself are so important in the world to support people through that density. Um, so yeah, so that's just a little bit about generational trauma, because I find some people talk about it, but we don't kind of get what it means and how it starts and the foundations. So I think that always helped me when I understood my own journey, because I've had a really big healing journey through generational trauma. Um, so some of the patterns, I thought about this because it was a great question, and I thought, oh, because we can talk and just generalize, right? But people are like, well, how does that relate to my life? Tell me more. I need a bridge now to understand what that means to me. Again, with that sort of theme of mothers, just because they're the clients that I work with, I came up with 4 that I feel are, well, they're uniquely non-unique. Like, I used to think everything's just, it's so unique, and it is when you think of your experience. But once I've just worked with so many people now, I see such similarity in the fears and the subconscious patterning. It's experientially it's different, but not when it comes to the subconscious. Subconscious is super black and white, and like, it behaves like a 3-year-old. It's like, this is how I do it. I keep you safe. There we go. And so the top one, the pattern that I see repetitively, is the what I would call the victim pattern. And this is this how this shows up is, everything is happening to me, not for me. I blame others for my difficulties, or I blame myself for my difficulties, and I'm not in many ways taking responsibility for here and now where I stand. It still not doesn't feel fair. So that's a big one that I think gets passed along the way, and particularly because I am a divine feminine coach, it's like a default for women. It's like a safe place, which feels and sounds so strange, but it's much safer to stay blaming others than it is to have to meet the pain, right, of what's gone on. The next one, this second pattern that I notice, is this was mine. This was my major pattern. So I haven't just worked with people with these. These are things and subconscious programs that I have lived through as well. And so the second one is like a chronic health pattern. And it's really hard to believe, that you are so much self-forgiveness came into this for me. So hard to believe that you would actually keep yourself sick in on any level of mind, right? But the truth is, it feels not fair that you're healthy and others aren't. That's the generational cycle. It's like, well, why is it fair that I am in good health when my mother and her mother and my auntie and say my dad, like whoever are suffering? Who am I to be well when these people who are kind of like God to me when I'm little, they're the ones that are teaching me about the world, aren't experiencing wellness? So we don't make a conscious decision to do that. We don't. We just stay. I feel we just find peace and safety in being like the people around us and relating to them so that we are kept safe, because I say to a lot of my women that I coach, when you're little, um, love is survival because if someone has to feed you, water you, and give you shelter, you can't do it for yourself, right? So choosing their patterns is safer than assuming if you don't, you might actually have to survive without them. And this is where subconscious is all about safety. That's its one major job. Um, so that's a big pattern I see. I see a really big pattern in that attention and love. So this is like children don't know the difference between those two. um, Attention and love are one and the same thing to a child. This is where, and I am a mother of a beautiful, spirited boy, two boys. And in my previous life, I was a conscious parenting coach, a communication coach, and the truth is, any attention's attention, any attention's love. Children aren't deciphering when I'm in trouble that it's means it's not attention. It's still giving them something. And so the idea is that when I do more, I receive more. That's attention equals love. Like do the whole I'm going to get out in the world and I'm going to run as fast as I can and get attention and get love from people when they tell me I'm amazing because I'm doing so many things. Um, Really common one in women, really common. We're doing so much more than we really need to. And it's to do with this with attention and love. And the last one I thought I'd include, which I think every woman, I feel like 95% of women will put their hand up to, and that is people pleasing and boundaries. So that's when I put others' needs ahead of my own needs, I am more loved because people love a person who makes them feel good. And they don't mind if that's at the expense of you. That well, I don't want to make people feel like they're malicious. They're not. They're just unconscious of how this whole thing works and their own behaviors. They're very unconscious of their own behaviors and the fact that they praise you when you do something you don't want to do because it makes them feel better, and you just get it. It's a habitual thing, very much the victim martyr. So it all, and I think with women we really see this in our mothers a lot, that I'll have the burnt chop, you guys have everything, and I'll have this kind of I'll please you before I please me, and it becomes like a guilt mix. It's a very confusing energy because you don't know whether to let that happen as a kid, let your mother forego her own needs. And I know I personally grew up like this, and it caused, yeah, confusion was what I would say. There was a lot of confusing energy. Um, and that took a while to unpack. It took a while for me to unpack all of that. So yeah, so I mean, I could go on forever. Obviously, I love this work, but that's what generational cycles look like. They're habitual things, they're ingrained in us, and they can be really hard to spot.
Epigenetics actually plays such a big role when it comes to generational trauma. I had such a light bulb moment when that was explained,
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
obviously I know my grandmother from my mother's side, and this explains so,
yeah,
so much from all the trauma that I have seen in myself, but also in my mom. just like you explained now with
Mm,
your mom. Same thing here. Like she would literally be the slave for everyone, right? So to speak. She
yeah,
would serve to the highest level and forget herself. And that was like the role model for me. I didn't even question it. It was like, this is a good mom. This is the representation of a good mom.
yeah,
And when I had my first kid, I did the same thing until I noticed, like, wait a minute, I'm burning out completely, also because I'm a single mom, right? My mom is married, so she had some type of support. But when I tried to do the same thing as a single mom, it was absolutely undoable. And it was only possible to go for a certain period of
yeah.
time where I really gave it my all and didn't really take care of myself, or just bare minimum, right, to survive. And that was so exhausting, and I
Mm.
had to learn really the hard way what it really and actually means to be a good mom. And it was a different definition from what we have seen from our moms. So let's go into epigenetics and how you would explain that.
It's interesting. So the work I do, the subconscious actual reprogramming work, like the tool, I guess, I use many, but the main one I use is fathered by Bruce Lipton. I don't know if he's come up in your research. Bruce Lipton is a cell biologist, so very, like, quite well known cell biologist, so scientist by background turned complete spiritual leader. He's actually out there now, completely changing perspectives and educating people around these topics. And so epigenetics and the way it was explained, the way he explained it, that always resonated with me, like you said, is your genes are influenced by your environment, and that's your internal and external environment. So that means, and what they found was, in the research I've seen, is 7 generations is how far that influence, meaning internal, external, of 7 generations back is part of your cellular makeup. So you've only got to think internal environment is thoughts. So literally, this is how far I think our consciousness needs to expand. You have the thoughts of your grandmother, like the energy anyway, of her thoughts. So maybe what happened? We all know the atrocities and the things that have gone on, and her thoughts in those moments of fear, childbirth. I teach a component of my course literally around the transfer of fear and energy through childbirth. Like it reignites things within us that our grandparents and ancestors went through, and the fear that was trapped, and it literally is just passed on and passed on. And what I feel is this is why it's a boom of cycle breakers, because it actually can't go any further. It can't continue. We will almost like burn out as a race if we were to just keep passing it down, because it accumulates. It doesn't get less. It's not like it dilutes. You've got to think, like all of these labels on our beautiful children and the things that are going on. Like, what is that? That is a build up. That is epigenetics in a full swing, where it's just gotten to the point where the cellular energy is just like it can only go one way now. It's got to be healed. It's got to be removed. And yeah, so Bruce Lipton brought that to my attention, and he advocates for the process. That's how I found the process I actually use to help women heal, is via him. And so I'm, yeah, really big on the epigenetics and how changing the environment is what heals the genes. So that means we can change our environment now, external, internal, and heal that entire line, because we have all of it within us. It's been passed along to us. So this is where energetics and energy is just, it's where I ended, and it's where I will always continue, because everything's energy. So yeah, I love these new but not new kind of concepts that we're finding out about. And like you said, what it brings is a conscious, like, piecing together clarity around, like, that's why that thing occurs. And I've seen it, I've watched it happen and never had a way to make sense of it. And now, like, why do I feel that thing when I'm around that person? Why is it that, I watch my mother change in front of that person? Like, why? And particularly women as little girls we were and still are so intuitive and so in tune to emotion. And everyone calls it an empath. I just say we are connected. We are meant to be connected to emotion. We are divine feminine. We were always meant to live by emotion. And so we felt everyone's, and then it kind of got squashed, and we didn't know if we were right or we were wrong, or was it real? And now we're getting all this evidence and research that's going, yeah, that thing you watched happen or you realized was going on but didn't know how to explain is now kind of becoming explained in more layman's terms to everyone. So
And when you speak about 7 generations, what is your reference point in terms of research? Is it the mother's side? Because that's what I read, or is it both
yeah,
sides?
what I read was definitely in the line of mother's side,
Mm.
because it goes on the childbirth. It's on that in utero kind of. I think that's the physical vessel that's saying, hey, it's getting passed along. And I think this just came to me intuitively, but like I just mentioned earlier, that I call it in my program I teach the tangible mother thread. It is literally like there's something that goes on during childbirth and the matrescence, which is becoming a mother and your identity changing. There's a transfer in that. And I think, yeah, I think that's why it's a fear thing. I think that the fear and the vulnerability of being in that much pain and changing your entire identity, the vulnerability releases some fear, and all this fear is almost like transported, if that makes. I feel like, yeah, the fear is what really pops and everything lets go, and then the child is feeling that. And I've had two incredibly different births, and I have two incredibly different children. And I don't it doesn't there's no judgment in that, but I know within me the difference between being an empowered woman, trusting her body and giving birth, and the result of that in every way of that since that child was born, and the woman who gave birth first, because you've never done it, your body's never done it, you've mentally never done it, and the process of that, and then the result. So it's proof in everywhere we want to look, we can find it, that it's energy and it's fear. And I think, yeah, I think that's what it is. The mother's side definitely has that more activated fear from all of that. And we are the creators. We birth worlds. Like, I love our men. I teach divine feminine, divine masculine balance. But the truth is, they're meant to fill our container. We're meant to create, and they're meant to provide and bring into the space. But I think there's just a divine thing we're meant to do, and that's why probably the epigenetic link is stronger with the mother, is what I'm trying to say there. Yeah.
And this is quite sad to notice when you think about all the competitive mindset that many women nowadays have with each other, right? When the truth is that we are so deeply connected, not only to our mothers and grandmothers, but also, I've always seen it this way because I also grew up like this, that the connection between women was so incredibly intense in a good way,
Mm.
in the most positive way. The level of support that I witnessed as a kid, where I grew up in that little village, was incredible. And when I moved to Germany, from Asia to Germany, I saw a switch, a difference, a big difference in how women were with each other. And knowing this now, that through epigenetics we are so in deeply connected with each other, with our whole family line, and going out and being competitive with another woman, or fighting against another woman, or trying to beat her down in whatever means possible, which we can see, especially on social media, is a very sad thing for me to see. And it's really beautiful for me to see that people like you are fostering those connections again. It is really, really opening up my heart. It is pure joy for me to witness that these communities exist and that women are actually supportive of each other. This is like a dream come true,
Yeah.
if you say, right, if you will, because through this type of connection, we can create something so much more beautiful and so much more enhanced, right, in terms of the
Mm.
lives that we can provide our children, right?
Yeah.
I think without that type of connection and solely based on competitive mindset between women, we would have a completely different society, which we are driving towards nowadays, especially in the West. This is what I see. There is also a difference, right, between emotional imprints or traumas from childhood that mothers often carry into motherhood and the resulting behaviors. And I would love to go more into that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love everything you say. It gets exciting, doesn't it? Like when we start even just these one-to-one connections, and then the more you find that, I think it's just an unlocking. It's a remembering. It's not like a new thing. It's an unlocking, and we're getting this validation of like, oh, that is my feeling to be a part of a tribe and to feel a village and to support women is there. It's real. So yeah, so definitely when it comes to great question again, emotional imprints and the difference, I'll just explain. So like a emotional imprint to me, I think of the word absorption. So I think because I teach energy, so I had to heal my entire life, my body, all my generational patterns. I got to energetics, and that's where I stayed because that was the thing that changed the most and gave me the most momentum to a better life. So I always think of it from an energy perspective. And so I think absorption, so that this emotional imprint is actually more that you've absorbed a pattern in your environment and just habitually, like you said, you watched, that's how you become a mother. It's like you replay it. It's like you hit play on the tape recorder and you go out and you go and replay it. So that's more like an imprint. Trauma, I call different. So trauma is like a significant moment. It's a moment where it caused significant nervous system either shut down or imbalance, and that can be, it can be perceived by someone else as small. This is the issue with children, is because we're adulting and some of us don't have these skills to be consciously aware that children are our equal. We judge their pain with an adult brain. And the truth is, where they are and who they are and the capacity they are more susceptible to having trauma because there's a bigger gap. We're not understanding them at where they're at. We're almost wanting them to come on, you'll be okay, move on, come to the adult brain, come to the adult brain. And so I think, yeah, definitely a trauma with little ones can be easily rewired. So I don't want to say, oh my gosh, it's all doomsday. It's not. Um, my key to that and what healed my son's trauma and mine was the combination of energetic healing and communication. If you kind of do one without the other, I feel you're only halfway there to breaking the patterns because our words go into our environment. And so they formulate the energetic environment just like the patterns. So it's like a perfect puzzle piece to me. But yeah, trauma is like getting stuck. An imprint's like a pattern, you're just on the treadmill. Whereas trauma, it needs a tool to get to. It doesn't have to be lengthy and doesn't have to be hard. That's a pattern too, that we think everything's hard. But it does normally, in my experience, it requires someone to hold space. This is why we're all so connected. We are all one. And you need someone that can hold a non-judgmental space to have that trauma integrated, met, released, whatever it needs, however it's done. I don't even think you need to be that precious around the tools. You've just got to have a really beautiful intention and hold a really great space. And that's what I actually see parenting as, is holding space, um, which requires, yeah, that zero kind of judgment. So yeah, we need more consciously aware adults doing this. And like I just said before, the child's perceived experience is that that's a trauma because something happened or someone took my toy or they keep doing it. and we need to be able to stay regulated. We need to be aware that even though to us we're thinking, oh, they're just tired, right? They're just tired, they're just hungry, maybe. But what if the emotional component trumps all of that and we're better to just touch on it, make sure that they feel heard, seen, the trauma cycle completes, as I say, and everyone moves forward. Like you get back on the horse. And we have faculties that are part of trauma cycles, tears. They're part of a trauma cycle. We were given these things to complete the pain cycles. And, I've met many, many women and I coach many women and I watch them suck in when they want to cry. And I am just like holding the biggest space and saying, please don't ever do that. You don't need to worry for me or you. You need those trauma cycles done. I know I'm big shoulders. I can hold space for you. It's okay. I've held space for myself. And as you get better, you can do that too. So when you can't be with someone, and we don't want to always have to go see the kinesiologist or book into the chiro or see our energy healer, like we need to get the tools in our world and be the space holder for us. And that includes our inner child, because that's what a lot of the work will end up being is the stuff that happened and no one was able to show up and hold a space when you needed it. And so it just stayed. So yeah, so trauma is a really interesting bucket to look into. I try to give people really good visuals, and the way that I describe it, because I work with energetics, is energy can't be destroyed. I think of my body as though there's a river of energy running through my body because it's like a river. That's chi, it's prana, it's whatever you want to refer to it as. The meridian, there's so many different descriptions, but the truth is it's a river, and energy can't be destroyed. It can only be diverted, and it can only be blocked. So every trauma is like you go and get a stone or a rock and you pop it into that river. And the more we do that, and we're not taking away any rocks because we don't have a healing tool and we don't have someone holding space, we end up with a lot of rocks in our river and it gets like a rapid. So things start to go wonky. And then after a while, things get blocked. And that's disease, is what we see. So, the biggest channeled message I ever got in my healing when I was a very sick woman was you need less, not more. And that to me translates to you need to remove the rocks from the river. You don't need to add to the river. We all supplements, there's beautiful things we can do in our life, but if we're not removing rocks from the river and we're adding more, I don't see that we're getting to the root of anything. And trauma, and I love Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's an incredible trauma specialist. And works in parenting and all of this same work. Yeah, he's very clear on that. Everything is a result, an end result of some sort of trauma, emotional trauma. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of information to take in, but it is important to see the difference, because I think emotional patterning, that can be probably rewired with action alone. You just witnessing it and choosing to do a different action. Your emotional imprint is to people please or to be the martyr. Well, you can just stop. You can just say, well, I won't, and override subconscious that way. You can. With trauma, I think it needs the space holding and it needs a tool for sure to be able to clearly complete it, integrate it, and know that you're clearing the rocks.
You just mentioned how you were able to heal your own and your son's trauma. And I would like to go into an example because you said that the main thing that helped you was communication and energy. Do you have a tangible example of what mothers could be struggling with, whether it is with a son or with a daughter? I'm sure it is similar because I do
Mhm.
notice and know that many women are really struggling, or mothers are really struggling with finding a balance, right, between addressing their own healing and going into that healing space, which takes time and attention. And that time is then taken away from the children. So, how can we make sure that we go on a healing journey without neglecting our kids and being shaming ourselves for that, or hating ourselves for that, and developing the right communication skills in particular situations?
Such a good question. It's such a real practical example of what women are thinking. And the first thing I'll say is it's basically it's because of their beliefs that they even feel that their own time spent healing is actually a bad thing and not a good thing. So it's still part of a program, if that makes sense. So the first thing I would do with women, because I have these women call me or we talk and they're like, but, and there's the buts and the why I can't, and all the excuses they will find if you give them a minute to why they shouldn't put themselves into healing. And it to me, it's you need a tool. You definitely need a tool in that moment. You need someone that can help you heal the program because otherwise you're pushing against it. You'll probably do the healing, but it won't feel good. It won't feel balanced, and you'll be guilty. So the actual healing you're doing is undoing, not undoing. It's just probably not as deep, effective, transformative as if you did some energetic work first and figured that pattern out and said, well, technically, because when we think of energy, everything's perspective. Even when we think of subconscious, so you and I will have the same situation and take two different perspectives from it. So everything's about shifting perspective. So what about the perspective that if your child gets to watch a woman heal the victim and become the divine feminine, what is that going to do to that child? Like what in changes in the environment that can heal that child spontaneously? So is it more important that you stay small and thinking you're nurturing every second of the day, can't give anything away to that's actually supporting keeping your programs running where they are. So I'm not saying like on a practical level, absolutely, you're gonna have to find balance with how you begin that process. And I have women going through that right now. They've got small children and they're committing to a 12, 16-week program with me and having to do tools, training, healing sessions, and making it work. But they stepped into it because their heart just in the end said, I can't actually logically make complete sense of this, but I'm feminine and my heart's saying this is where I need to be, so I'm going. And I think any decision as a mother, you lead from your heart, you impact your children because you are divine feminine and she leads from her heart, and that's who you should innately be. And so if you're being her and your children are witnessing that, I believe you're actually healing just because you're being her. You're healing the programs because you're changing their reality and yours. Um, to start with, you're going to need some support, but I know what I did, and my tangible like example is I made a promise to myself that my health had to become my priority at some point in my life. And if it never did, then I would never be my full potential. And if I was never my full potential, how was I to model what being full potential looks like? How's my child? Where are they going to get that benchmark from? We talked about that at the beginning. It's the environment. So it all clicked, and I was like, oh, okay. So once we make things a priority and we make some form of an agreement, I wrote things down and wrote letters and had things on my wall. Like everywhere I turned, I covered all bases. I didn't just go into meditation and think I was going to poof heal 40 years of trauma. I took action. Action plus our energy and our manifestation and our thoughts is what creates our reality. So, and every time I took action, I felt rewarded. There would be something miraculous that would just show up, a person, an experience, a memory, and it would work. It just worked. And that's what you know, as women, we need to experience that to believe it. If we sit and we stay, we're never going to experience that to know how things can truly flow for you unless you take a risk. I actually believe you have to take a risk on that. You can't give someone an answer and say, oh, well, you're going to be able to heal and your child's never going to feel like they're second best. And it can't be perfect. The timing will never be, it will never be completely perfect as a mother. that you can do it, but you are very, very resourceful. And I was very resourceful, and took action, and I had courage. And I just said that there's no easier way than me healing me to change them. If I keep going, I'm going to be trying to heal me and heal them later, because they're going to be repeating patterns in adulthood, and I'm going to be trying to help them, and they're going to probably maybe be dependent on me because they're mentally, like, I didn't know, but I could tell when I thought of that path, I felt dark. And when I thought of the path of just creating a space somehow, somewhere, in small doses and increasing it to heal, felt so much lighter. That's my intuition going, go the light, go the light, go the light. Um, and you know what I found, and this is what I share with my women, is when you do that, children don't actually require the same level of healing as us. Like, they're much more vital for starters. Like, just think of my example of the river and the rocks. They've got a lot less rocks than us. And when we talked in that other question about, how connected we are energetically with our children, same thing. You heal that thread, it heals in them. It goes both ways. You don't just heal backwards, you can heal forwards. So all the work I do does, it goes both directions. So I think for the mums out there that are doubting that, there is nobody can get inside of you and make that choice. Number one, you've got to prioritize you at some point. You just have to. And in doing that, you have to know that it's the greatest gift you can ever give your children. You don't have to leave them. Like, my blueprint is called healing through motherhood, because I think we've been led to believe, like, what, I've got to go lock myself in a room away from my children and heal. And the truth is, and what I found, and I call my son and my women know, we have a healing baby. So if you've got multiple children, you will have one of those children that I believe is your healing baby. He or she will be the mirror that will hold things up and go, I'm going to make this so hard to avoid. And you have to, with a mother's love, because we don't walk away from our children, we have to go in and we have to say, okay, I take on that challenge. And the way we do that is through a relationship. We can't exit the relationship, close the door, and heal on our own with our own space. We actually need the contrast of a relationship to heal. And so it's healing through motherhood. You're doing it while you're with them. I do it while I'm with my kids. I sit in postures and subconsciously balance myself in front of my children every day, because what I'm showing them is how quick energy can move. Mum's about to mum's about to boil, or something's happened. So I'm going to take responsibility, and I'm going to neutralize that. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to clear it. It takes a matter of minutes. And then I show back up, regulated, still steering the ship. Because if I'm not regulated, no one's steering the ship, and everyone feels unsafe. So this is why it's a very important role, and we have to take it not seriously. We just have to know it's actually our innate place to be like that, um, and override. And yeah, so I just watched my son spontaneously, things just dropped away. He mirrored all my stuff before that. And when it left me, all of a sudden it left him, because it was like it was no longer in our field. It wasn't in the energetic soup we were living in anymore. It wasn't on my radar. And therefore, it brought no benefit to him to have it, right? It was replaced with better habits and behaviors and language. And now I get to hear him speak to his baby brother. And literally, it's like hearing all that work you did that you weren't even sure at the time was necessarily going to be the holy grail. It's 2 years, 3 years, and they're doing it, and it's there, and it's a pattern now. It's a pattern. So I've overridden old negative, or like unhelpful patterns with new ones, and I'm seeing the change now. And he's 8. um, Huge things. And communication, like, for me, I teach communication as a spiritual tool. I'm going one step further. They're not just words. Words have energy. Words have, congruence. Like, when you feel something, you believe it and you speak it, another person feels that. You're undeniable and you're very influential. And that's the communication I teach because, this is what we want our children to have a big voice. And one of the biggest things I see in women off the back of our last discussion is a pattern from childhood that affects them as mothers is they go into a rage when their children will not listen. It's like you have to push it down and stop yourself from wanting to strangulate them. And I know that because I was that woman. And the truth is, they trigger in you the feeling of never being heard as a child because you're using your voice and you're saying, please do what I ask. I need you to help me, whatever it is. And they ignore it or they don't respond. And that triggers the little girl who had feelings or had something to say and she was never validated. And that's, yeah, it's probably the biggest I see is the voice thing. And with women particularly. And you would know, like you're doing the voice training. My goodness, it's your jam. And it's so interesting to see. Totally healable through the healing work from childhood and showing up with different communication. It's like you completely override the whole thing. It can be very, very different. And I'm forever grateful that I found that at the beginning of my journey, the communication, because it never sat with me how important it was until I started really changing the way I spoke and felt so much things heal, so much healed. And so, yeah, I would highly encourage women. And part of my program is we do a whole module on conscious communication and using language as a spiritual and a healing tool.
What I really love about what you just said is that you need to both go into yourself and heal your own trauma, so to speak, and recognize the patterns and so on. But you will only be able to fully heal once you step into the relation again with that person that you feel needs healing as well, or the relationship needs healing. I also believe that it's not enough to be the monk, and just meditate for yourself and heal yourself. The moment you come out, like the thread between you two is broken or is
Mhm.
unhealthy, and you will never be able to heal that thread when you're alone. And I feel
Ever.
this is like one of the hardest things to do, or at least it
Mhm.
feels to me like one of the hardest things to do, because it requires the willingness of the other person. It
Mm.
requires the consciousness of the other person. And
Mm.
especially if it is a little child, where you just beautifully described that the consciousness is not there yet, the identity is not built out fully. They trigger you like crazy, right? And like you said, you go into rage mode because of your own trauma,
Mm.
and you then just don't know how to handle that whole situation because you are again in your adult brain, and it feels so difficult for you to actually act from an adult brain, right?
Yeah.
You are so triggered in your emotional brain area that you find it hard to calm down. And what I also notice is the urgency that women oftentimes feel. I need to fix this right now, right?
Yeah.
Before the neighbors hear everything, before
Ah,
everyone thinks XYZ about me, right?
yeah.
I noticed that, and I feel it's so unnecessary. The type of stress that we put ourselves upon, it doesn't
Mm.
have to be solved right now. I mean, if they have to scream, let them scream. If they have to
Yeah.
express something, just let it be. And I feel, and maybe particularly because I'm a voice trainer also, please like stay calm, because of you will damage your voice so much when you do it just a couple of times. Because there can be a singular event where you just go so much in rage and you scream at the top of your lungs, and this can be a
Yeah.
vocal trauma for life. This can
Yeah.
develop into serious vocal diseases that only
Mhm.
surgery can then heal you from, right?
Yeah.
And this is another
Wow.
aspect that I feel mothers need to think about.
Totally.
And I didn't in the beginning when I was a new mom. I think barely anyone thinks about it unless they have like really great parents as role models, right?
Yeah.
So it was really, really difficult. And I know it is really difficult for many women to remember that their own healing journey, as you mentioned, should be top priority, and
Mm.
not let anything or anyone trigger them at any
Mm-mm.
time. so
Mm.
that they stay collected, stay calm, and stay the best selves that they can be in any situation and moment, which is like an utopia, but we can
Mhm.
strive for that utopia to be at least 80% of our lives. Then
Totally.
I think we do really great if we can handle that 80% of our time.
Oh, so true. You've just got like, where are the limits? Like we say 80, like you've just got to keep breaking the limit. Like what feels comfortable, what's okay. I love myself even when I'm angry. I say to my kids, I didn't handle that how I would have thought I would, but I still love myself. I just want to apologize if how it landed for you. And it's just you can like I call it reset and repair. Like you can repair anything, but you've got to be vulnerable. You can't be in the seat of the parent and the boss. Like I call myself the leader and I have for many years. And that's why I teach women to become energetic leaders, which requires healing, and you've got to lead the family and lift everyone. When you're an energetic leader, you don't beg or plead or worry if people are coming. You see, I get that divine feminine vibe. You just go and they just follow your energy. You've got an energy that people want to be with, and you lift everyone to their best version. Um, so yeah, it's so interesting you share all of that information. I feel that feelings are a universal language, though. So with little kids, you said at the beginning, it's so hard because they are little and they're not invested in, they can't see what you can see, but they do know feelings from a really young age. As long as we start labeling them from when they're very little and we talk about them and openly discuss, I think it becomes quite universal, and you have that thread with them then that you can go back to is about the feeling at least. They're not going to get the details, but they're going to understand if you can explain how you felt by what happened. And they will get very attuned to their feelings. And something our generation, I think, got a little bit stolen from us was that attunement, because there were a lot of parents out there who it had happened to them too, and so they didn't validate our emotions. They kind of unknowingly manipulated us to question our own feelings, right? Because they would say, oh, don't worry, it's okay, or no, that didn't happen, or you're overreacting, or be quiet, go to bed. So they made us question, like, oh well, okay, did I ever, like, was that a real feeling? Should I have felt that? Is that feeling good? But so
Did that ever
it's just,
happen? Is also a
yeah.
question, right?
Exactly. Was it real? Because their perception is different to mine, but I don't know that when I'm a kid. I look at them like they're God. So I'm going, oh gosh, well, what they're saying must be the truth. And so we didn't do a lot of feelings talk in my family. It wasn't something that happened. And so I'm really conscious of that. And with two boys, sometimes I don't want to hear it. I can overfeel them. I can do a little bit of too much feelings, but I know that one day those repetitive, beautiful, well-intended moments will all drop. And I just know it in my heart. I don't need verification from anywhere outside of me, because I'm seeing the things occur as we go. um, but yeah, definitely you need a relationship. Like once you get into energy and quantum, which I teach as well, everything's co-creation. Like, so this is what I say to women, like, I know you're so concerned that your child is suffering, but do you know they chose you? Do you know they chose this life with you? There's no better mother. I don't care how bad you think you are, they chose you and you chose them. So when you have this perspective shift, when you get into energy, this is why I take my women out of 3D and into energy world, because in energy world, everything's fixable. Because an emotion, a trauma is just energy. It's just trapped energy. Doesn't even have to be that personal. It's just energy, and we need to release the energy. Just meet it, validate it, acknowledge it, and move through. And once you get to there, some problems that were problems, the perspective shifts again, and they're not such big problems. And that's when, to me, healing begins, because you're leaving behind all of those old constraints of the physical and the how and the, it's like, well, let's just do energy and watch. And once you have a benchmark that energy heals all, and you witnessed it in your own body, your beliefs change in an instant about everyone and everything around you. And so you really go through some major layers as you heal as women, and motherhood Motherhood is the catalyst. That's why I ended up, because that's what was my catalyst to healing, was becoming a mother. Um, and I do think it's very deeply connected to the intensity of love. So we talked about the intensity of fear through birth, through change, through, yes, but the intensity of love is what pushes us to do the things you and I are doing right now. It honestly, it is to sit here and say, well, I don't want to contribute to their unhealthy future, their bodies breaking down, or their minds. I want to know that I left a legacy that meant they could have a really thriving, magical experience here, and that I can be with them and I can actually do that too, and I deserve that. So, yeah, so powerful.
Now, some parents might think now, this sounds like peaceful parenting with all the
Huh.
energy work and all that stuff. And they could confuse that with specific things that I'm sure you are not teaching. So let's dissect
Mm.
between peaceful parenting, what it is and what it's not. And by being a divine feminine leader, you actually don't allow just anything to happen. But what are the things and the attributes, the characteristics of a divine feminine leader that makes her such a magnet for her kids, her spouse, and everyone else to follow her energy?
I didn't really understand a lot about that divine feminine, divine masculine when I started my journey. It came later. And then when I looked at it, I was like, it's actually everything. It's yin and yang, it's light and dark, it's complete balance, right? And so what I think it resonated for me was that I started noticing in myself that I was just lifting the people around me. I wasn't doing it deliberately. And the way I was doing it, it's just alignment. Like we just talked about this, but how do I nurture my child and heal myself? It's like, well, what are you in alignment with? I'm in alignment with my happy, healthy future and bringing my child. Well, go heal. Go heal. Don't be undeniable about it. Don't be 50%. Don't be 50%. She's not 50%. So the way I just, again, to make it tangible, I think, well, think about the best leader you've ever had in a job or whatever. Were you safe? Like, how did they behave? Did you know that they would find the answer? They might not have it immediately. They nurtured you if you needed to be nurtured. They listened when you needed to be heard, but you knew that they knew where they were going. That's a divine feminine leader. So, like I said before, steering the ship. Who's steering the ship? And I believe energetically, it's the divine feminine that steers the ship, because what I've found through my own relationship with my husband and then all the women I've coached, you know, and I'll get to peaceful parenting and explain that, but our men want that. They actually, the divine masculine doesn't want to lead the energy of the children. He doesn't, that's not his innate place to be in charge of everyone's energy and the direction of that. He will fill the space with everything and anything that you need to to flourish. But he doesn't want to be, he wants that to be you. They probably can't articulate that, but I guarantee it's the truth. So when we fit in and sit in our roles that we are embodying, we're here, I'm feminine, he's masculine. When we're doing it and we're doing it well, it's balance. It's the yin and the yang. It clicks. So I think men maybe have the level of awareness and emotional connection we do to see that. So if what I find with 90% of my women is they start the program and they're in control, they're in their masculine. And what's happening, they've they've they're overstepping it, he doesn't quite know where to fit, and everything's out of balance and the kids feel it all. And that you're trying to be the man and the woman and love you dearly. You're a single mom and you're pulling that off. You're trying to do that. And there's going to be women who will have to do that. In that circumstance, if there's any of them listening, please reach out and get resourceful to find masculine energy you can bring in, safe, outside masculine energy from friends, whoever it is, because you cannot be both. You cannot sit in both seats truly. Um, so I think that's how I see an energetic leader. You start the healing, you start the energy realignment, and then everybody will just follow what you build. Um, I'm not religious anymore, but I was raised Catholic, and I always envision Mother Mary as like when I think her the way she was graceful. Graceful is the word I use most often when I think of divine feminine. She just gracefully manages a moment. So for me, as the divine feminine, that means my children are melting down, someone's hurt, someone's upset, my husband's on the phone, and I stop, and I have to maintain that graceful presence. I have to maintain the leadership. And so that means I need a minute to sit there and rebalance my hemispheres of my brain, like you mentioned before. That's what I do. Bring back to a whole brain state where I'm logical and emotional, and I can see the situation through practical eyes, and then just start again. And everybody will just settle. And I can do that 5, 10 times a day. I don't run into fixing problems for people. Like my children are hard and nurturing. If I'm trying to solve all their problems, I'm making them dependent upon me, and they're not going to be resilient. So yeah, there's so many things you can do. But when you speak of peaceful parenting, I think that, or gentle parenting is another word, like it got thrown around a while back. And I think it probably got a bad rap because it feels too soft. And then people have an opinion about that, right? I don't think, I think children and gentle go hand in hand to me. So I think it's beautiful. Processes I teach in communication are about having less problem time in your life with your family. And that's peaceful parenting. Is you can't, like, we have to get firstly very clear on our expectations. So that to me is belief work and healing, right? First. So this is why the healing to me needs to be up front. You got to work out, what am I expecting of this parenting journey? If you're out of balance with that and there's more problems than there is peace, to me, you've just tipped the scale out of peaceful parenting. So peaceful parenting is not going to be 100% everyone's, flowers and roses and picnics and bike rides. Like, it's not realistic, but it's about the balance. So you only know that in your family is, are we experiencing more problems than we are calm? Then okay, we need some tools. We need to work out why. Yeah, that's the way I approach it. And what we teach is all about giving parents communication tools to do that. You want to increase no problem time, because the purpose of that is that no problem time is where we grow together. It's where we learn from each other. It's where we share values with each other. And that's where you have the most influence over your child. It's like I say when I teach, don't teach someone to swim when they're drowning. So when your child is experiencing a problem, it's so true. When your child is experiencing a problem because they've lost their teddy, trying to teach them that they should have put it in a safe place while they're in their emotional brain flooded and distraught is wrong timing. And what you're doing is jeopardizing the connection. You're not increasing it. And there's a specific skill for that moment that we teach when the child is having a problem called active listening. And you just have to hold the space for their emotion, their trauma, we talked about, complete the trauma. And then in the no problem time later, once the bear's found or whatever's happening, you would say, it's really important for me. I always found when I put things in the same place, they're never lost. Or whatever the lesson is and your value is, you don't teach it to them while they're in their emotional brain. And I see so many parents doing that because they're triggered. They're triggered by the moment and they're not calm. And this is what healing will do. Healing will bring back calm and tools that like I said, using postures, using regulation tools, breath, whatever it is, keeps you calm, that you can manage that like a divine feminine leader, like everything's going to be okay. I've got you. The ship's safe. And so to me, that's peaceful parenting, is however you do it, it does not have to be the same way I did, but you want to have more calm time, more no problem time than problem time.
That is so true what you just said. That during the emotional peak, so to speak, of the child, where they are enraged or they are so deeply sad about something, the brain is actually in a state of stress. And whenever you are stressed, the frontal cortex is actually not really open to learn anything. So memory is also blocked. So whatever you are saying in that moment will get lost. So you not only lose your own energy because you've just dumped it in the trash, so to speak, but you also are, as you said, giving the child the wrong lesson, that
Mm.
you invalidate whatever they are feeling
Yeah.
or experiencing, right? And you just give them a harder time that than they already have. And this is a
Mm.
really great reminder to take the time. And time is really a concept that people struggle a lot with. I noticed in the West more than in the East. They
Mm.
feel like they have to well, certain Eastern countries also, like Japan, for example, they have a very, very rigid idea of time. Um,
Yes.
but they feel like they have to accomplish certain things at a certain time. So the timing of the body, the innate timing of the body, is not really paid attention to. And they only pay attention to an external clock, but not the internal clock. And I think this is also a
Yeah.
level where lots of disease can take place in many people, and especially women and especially mothers who are under so much stress, the more children they have, obviously. So I think it's a way to calm down in that moment and to take the time, even if you think, oh my god, we have to be at school at 8, we ain't got time, right? But I think as a
Yeah.
feminine leader, you need to step up. And
Mhm.
maybe not everybody will be able to do it like I did it, but I think to a certain degree, you can step up as a woman, you can step up as a mother and say, stop. Like, this is
Yeah.
what we're going to solve now. And no matter who is waiting, the school can wait. This is a much
Yes.
more important problem. Your safety, your integrity, and your health is my number one, right? This is what you can tell
Love it.
yourself. And
I
whatever
love it.
the school will give you, what type of stress they will give you or your child, you can deal with later on, right? There are also
Mm.
ways. And I know that you are
Yeah.
also homeschooling your kids, right? So this type of stress is completely out of your league.
It's something so close to my heart, and I pushed it away for so long. And it's not like my son, as I said, he's 8, so he did go to school. He did go for about 2 years, and we had a separation anxiety, and all of that was going on. And I cleared all the guilt of that, but yeah, it had to be the way it had to be for me to find this divine feminine leadership. And it was just a moment. I'll there was a moment that I realized I was taking him there every day, and he was experiencing a lot of things. Struggled with the system in general because of my parenting, and then I think now it's so easy to see, right, that I was so out of alignment. You're living this life at home with all these beliefs, and then you're here. So I remember thinking, well, I'm kind of half in, half out here. That's not a great lesson. That's not teaching my son about alignment. But I realized what I was doing was sending him, and I felt quite okay because I had all these tools, right? And I could clear his subconscious, and I could remove the stress and the trauma of him, which I was doing daily. And then I would get back in the car and I would drive back. And one day I was driving back and I thought, what am I doing? Why am I'm driving back to the place that's causing him trauma that I'm removing. And then so not only am I kind of, doing him in service, an injustice, I'm putting work on myself that I've just got to trust my heart. And I'd had a healer once and had this vision. Like, I am very connected to children. I think my mission here is actually to serve children. It's not, I teach mothers and I coach mothers, but that's because they are the vessel that raises children. And I think my contribution to the world will be contributing to like children breaking through a lot of limits. So when they're growing and they don't have 40 years worth of healing to do because I was able to teach their mother how to do that, what are they going to do? I feel like I'm going to open up doors for them to really push the limits of what's available and what quantum, all this reality is about. Um, so anyway, so the decision was made. I was super honest with everyone there, and I just knew. I was like, and the excitement and the feeling in me when we did it, and I had him with me, and I just had this big download that said, because he's had a lot of health issues, he did have with along with me, and then a lot of behaviorals, a lot of the stuff that, we see out there. And I remember this big download that came through, and it just said, it still makes me a little bit teary. It said, the loving presence of a mother heals all. The loving presence of a mother heals all. And I thought, all my child needs is my loving presence, because when he was very little, I was very sick. I was emotionally unavailable because I was just too sick. So I thought, wow, this is space. So what homeschooling for me is, it's a create space in life. When we are at school and work and we're at sport and we're at birthday parties and we're at more sport, the subconscious knows there's no room for healing. The energy knows there's no space for healing. Like I've talked about holding space for someone, it's just innately in us. No one's gonna, you're not gonna go through a trauma healing at a birthday party. You need a person with you, and you need there to be a safe space, and it needs to be really safe. And so, wow, when we started, did everything just fell apart, and it was one of the most growth moments of my life to see that I'd made this choice and aligned with it, and then everything felt that it went backwards. But it was healing. It was so healing. It was so much healing in these moments of us being at home together, being reconnected. And it was all about me protecting him by, our children want us to protect them. And I wasn't doing that to his, perception, even though I am in every other way. And this was what that did. I think I protected him from what was not serving him, and then he was able to release all of the stuff that needed to come out, right? um, but as far as like practically, it's again, that's also been a really cool learning experience, because I'm I wasn't a teacher. I didn't, and we come into it with this mindset that we have to recreate school. And I actually, so I'm currently in the process of building a program for women wanting to homeschool, and it's all based around mindset plus some tools. You need to get practical, right? But it's all mindset. Like it's nothing like school. It was never meant to. It's not what it is. So we get this fear in us that we've got to be a teacher and we've got to be structured and we've got to meet a curriculum. It's actually nothing like that. And I've had lots of mentors help me through that so that I could feel the way it really can flow. And now, funnily enough, my dream, this vision I had of being with children, it was like on a creek, that healer I was mentioning. And I had these children and I was just walking along, leading them. I was like divine feminine. I was just walking and they were all walking behind me, but with this. And so we've just started 2 weeks ago a homeschool hub at my property. We have a beautiful tutor, Steiner, spiritual man, and I have 15 beautiful boys, 15 boys that come to my property, and they get nurtured and taught and honored for being boys, whereas so many boys are misplaced in school system because it's not built for an energetic boy, and they're shamed and shamed because they want to be a boy and they've got to sit, and it really can affect them in many ways. So yeah, homeschooling has healed our family. It's opened up doors to me running a business. Like, this one decision was so on point. It's my alignment and my mission here to serve children that it rippled out into everything. And now we have an unbreakable bond. We have hard days. We have hard days, like absolutely, but I have tools. And so it all had to happen in the right order so that I had tools to manage his resistance. Because yes, he wants to be playing with his dog and he doesn't want to be learning. And that's okay, because I think that's a natural, reaction. Now it's about, our layer is about discipline, self-love. So I feel so warm knowing that my child is going to get my belief systems, not his teacher. He is going to receive, and I've worked on my beliefs solidly for 4 or 5 years. So I'm confident that my belief systems about the world and everything probably are going to be more what he will need than beautiful teachers. I connected with all of them, but they're working and they're burnt out and they're busy and they've got 30 kids and there's one of them. And so the energy of those two environments to me, it just it's a no-brainer. Um, and I was lucky enough to be in a position to do it. So I am very aware of that. But yeah, we have a little 3-year-old brother and he's with us and they've just become so close. He's learning stuff now too. And it's this life. Life's good. Life's really on point, and I'm very proud of myself. I will say that with sticking with those nights, like where I would sit on the end of my bed, and it had been a bad day. It had been a really bad day, and he was sick, and I was sick, or he was angry and I was sick, or school was terrible, whatever it was, and I used my tools. I sat there and I cleared the energy and I just kept going. And had I not been that divine feminine leader and done that, had I watched a movie, got on my phone, or gone to bed, I wouldn't be here and they wouldn't be reaping the benefits of my commitment. And so I'm forever grateful for myself and for the people that have taught me what I know, that we have this life. Like, homeschooling's freedom. The biggest thing I remember thinking is I want to teach my child what a free life looks like. A free life, as in you got to be self-disciplined, you got to love yourself, but you get to choose. You don't have to be 9 to 5, 9 to 3, 5 days. And no, you have a free life, and that will ingrain in him now. Um, and hopefully really bring up that creativity of I can have anything, I can do anything I put my mind to. So, yes, we are now officially homeschoolers. And it's something I look forward to every week is being with these beautiful boys and watching my son thrive. So,
I have to say, it's an honor speaking with you in this
mm,
particular moment because I'm a homeschooler or free schooler myself.
mm,
I am traveling full time for the past 3 years, and most people send their kids to school. So, meeting
mm,
someone who has the same values, specifically with what you said last, that you want to teach your children what freedom really looks like,
mm,
that you want to teach them the values that would really make them resilient human beings that are leaders and not just
mm.
consumers, is
Yeah,
also the same aim and goal that I have or had when I decided, I'm not
yeah,
sending my son to school anymore because
yeah.
he was up until fourth grade, and
Mm.
we've been living in Germany, and it is illegal to homeschool, which is one of the
Ah,
reasons why I started traveling.
travel. Great.
Yes, and so we need to talk about the logistics because I know a lot of mothers specifically are interested in homeschooling, free schooling, and stuff like that. But the fact is that it is illegal in many countries or most countries.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're in Australia and it's not illegal here. There's definitely regulations. We have to register, we have to complete plans, we have to prove we are. So when you say free schooling, that's kind of what I did. But I just had to make sure that the evidence was there to show that he was progressing. Maybe we are lucky here, but it's not too rigid from what I can tell. Like, technically my son would have been or has learning difficulties. So even that gives me a bit more grace. Now, every woman will not be like that. And so all I can say is what's made it most powerful for me, and I've had the most impact on other women, is finding a tribe. And this is why support, connecting, and you started this interview saying, what about women supporting women and not competing? Do you know how much more powerful we are as a collective? And you could build something, and once it was working and running and ticking, and then you have evidence, and I believe you have a case and you have something that is going to be a lot more tangible than if you were just one out saying this isn't fair, I don't want it to be this way. You've got to, I don't want to say build a case, but I just look at that as being resourceful divine feminine. If it's in my heart, I can have it. How am I going to get resourceful? Which includes how am I going to work on my beliefs and heal the barriers I've made in my own mind to this working? How am I going to show up in the 3D reality to meet, meet worldly needs. Like, and yes, there's systems and there's governments and there's things, and I'm here and I'm having this experience, so I will, be a part of it. And we are so resourceful. We undercut ourselves. We doubt ourselves. I just went and said I'm doing it, and now there's women everywhere flocking. Someone's got to lead it. So my advice would be just lead it and then find your tribe, watch them come. Like I say, 15 boys, they all have a mama. They're now my team, my mamas, and I'm theirs. So now what do we have? Now we have something. We got something that really speaks a lot to anyone else that's looking in. And so I think that power in the collective is a big thing. Um, yeah, and I just think toe the line to a point, do what you have to do, make it look as legitimate as you can. It's it's fine. We know what's best for them. They're living proof that it works. Things are changing and it's coming thick and fast. Even where I am in Australia, like people everywhere are doing this and looking for, this teacher's booked out for homeschooling. And I just live in a little city on the eastern coast of Australia. Like it's coming. So yeah, I think, and this is why I want to build this program, right? Homeschool Heroes, because I'm like, it's not even, it's funny. I had this epiphany. I'm like, it's not even homeschooling. What we're not, because we're not, like my son goes to a tutor and he'll be online with a trainer, and then so it's not like he's sitting at home schooling. And I think that word almost deceives women. It's like homeschool together. And our language, like we've talked about, is so important. I feel that there's something else coming as needs to be labeled something just normal. Like it's just, they're just schooling, they're just learning, they're growing, whatever it is. And I think mindset is the number one, because your beliefs will always put a cap on what's possible, always. So that's where I think I've had an advantage at times, because I have trained in that belief work. Every challenge in my life, every moment of self-doubt, every time I had anything, I was able to go within and go, what do I want to believe instead? Put that new belief in, override the old, and keep moving, And so that's the advice I would give at the moment. But I'm still, if I have to be very honest, I'm still only 18 months into the journey. So there's going to be so much more for me to learn and share and adapt to. But for now, it's a heart-centered feeling to be with your son and wake up. And I say we do gratitude before we even start. Like, look out there, we sit on our balcony and we look at the trees and the birds, and I say, man, this is school, baby. Like, this is school. There's no walls. There's no sit down, look the same, dress the same, act the same. There's you and me and your baby brother and our dog and a property, and let's do it. It's just a vibe. It's so special, so special. I feel really grateful as a mum. I got this, I created it, but yeah, I wish it for all mums. I really do. It's very healing.
Absolutely. I can subscribe to that. Also, very grateful that I found the strength and courage to actually do it, because I
Yeah.
was a very fear based woman for the longest time of my life. Feared almost everything. The main point for me is to having the capacity and having the space and time to recognize each and every child's gifts, because
Yes.
those are what will build their futures. And
Yes.
when we look at it now, it is almost very stupid to me to send a child to school, because school is very outdated when we look at the curriculum, how it is built, the structure. The society is not in need of a human being that functions on that level. Because
Mm,
of AI progressing faster and faster, we are not in need for robots
no.
anymore, because we will have robots made from
Mm-mm.
steel or what have you, aluminum. What we need is real human beings that will be able to lead the world as humans, as living creatures, into a realm where robots have no say in it. And I think
Yeah.
this is what makes it so important to have individual curriculums for boys and for girls. And people may say I'm a traditionalist or what have you, but this is my observation from being a mom, both of a boy and a girl. And I didn't want to have it being true. When I first started being a mom, I thought, I will be modern, right? I will teach them everything. But then you kind of notice the big differences, right? And the things, what they need, right, individually on the level of becoming a man, right? My son is 13, so there is growth and there's development in that space. And I need to create a space for that to be possible without
Yes,
constraints, without any type of emotional overreaction and stuff like that. There needs to
yes,
be enough space for that individual to find himself and to build a possible future. And the same for my daughter. And this is like a big flex that is really exhausting at times because you don't know what you're
yeah,
doing, right? And as you said, community is so important in that sense to connect with others and see what are they doing, what is working and what is not. So
mm-mm,
your daughter will need very different things compared to your son. And so I
totally.
love that you go into it, that you actually build the program, you
No,
really teach them to manage themselves as human beings and not manage themselves to become robots, even
that's
though
right.
some type of routine is also necessary. So, as you said,
Yep.
being a divine feminine leader also means to have the balance that you have to embody. It's not like, oh, do whatever you want, learn whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
It's also showing that there is a benefit in structure, that there is a
Yes.
benefit in routine. Like, for example, if you want to learn a musical instrument, like my daughter is really fond of right now, learning to play piano, you
Wow.
need a structure, right? You need routine, discipline, what you mentioned earlier before, and you are teaching them certain aspects that will benefit them individually, right? And not just everybody needs to be disciplined, everybody needs to show up at 10 o'clock,
Yeah,
I think this is destroying a lot in our children. And I
me too.
hope, just like you, that many, many more women will wake up to that, what kind of trauma
Mhm.
they are actually causing their children without putting blame on them or shaming them, but just
No.
trying to talk to their hearts and
Yeah.
telling them that they will benefit much more. They, as mothers, and their children will benefit much more from that type of connection that they will be able
Oh,
to build, which
every
is being destroyed by the separation of those two, the mother from the child.
well, it's that protection thing I spoke about. It's like just you only have to get empathic and think, okay, you're the child, say you're 5, and here they start at 5 years old, they go to school, and they're treated in that way we've just discussed, like because it has to be because there's one adult and there's 30 children and they've had to blanket it. And so the feelings of that child, and then when they want protection and they want someone to stop that, and you're just not there. It's just this conditioning that you're just not there. You're just not there when they needed you. You're just not there. And I think I did that, and I had to heal it. And the biggest thing, that I noticed was if I was here to really be my full potential too, I was going to go into the thing that was uncomfortable. And as much as it was in my heart to do it, it would made my mind very uncomfortable. And that's what all the women are doing. They're stopping at the discomfort of my mind, can't figure it out. How do I work, make money? How do I raise? Yes, yes, I understand. And I literally hear you and see you. That went through my head too, but it's working now. So if I'm a living example and you're a living example of traveling the world, homeschooling 2 children, running a business, it's not a show off thing. It's not like a I can and you can't. It's like a we want to show you the way. See it happening, change your mind and say, well, if they can, I can. And know that the biggest fear, and I know this through the work I do of a parent and a child, it's the same thing, and it's withdrawal of love or disconnection. It's the biggest fear. It's nothing else. It's that, I fear that you would stop loving me and vice versa. We fear that we'll lose our children. And you see people with teenagers that they disconnect from, and they might put on a brave face, but it breaks them. And the power parenting and the choices from a young age have created that disconnect. And so to me almost saving him, that wasn't why I did it, but that was how it felt. And then healing together, because I had to heal a lot to be able to show up like this. This didn't just happen. I had to be like, okay, homeschool, that's a healing journey for me. I had to my own learning and my own conscious mind and adaptability and all the things had to be pushed and massaged, and I had to learn and grow. And he watched that. He went through it with me. I honestly feel like I couldn't be any more connected to a human that you've been through that with, even at 7 or 8 or 10, or I don't think it matters. So you're right. I think it's just gonna, it's healing. It's a healing act. It's like I take you, I protect you, you're mine. We're each other's. We've got this. We're free. It's like if you go through the cycle, it's pretty bloody special. And I just wish and hope, and this is why my part of my mission will be serving women in that space too, because I did, like you said, I started and they were like, "Oh, you're so courageous. Oh my goodness." And my ego didn't really need that. It was nice. But then they started asking more questions, and then they want it. And I thought, well, you want this. So I'm not gonna, I can't make you, and I wouldn't do that. I'm just gonna lead by example, like you are. And you just do it. And people flock because we're divine feminine leaders and they come and they magnetize to our energy. And now I look around and I have 15 women here with me dropping their children in this space. And I think that didn't happen by voice alone. That's energy. That's magnetism. That's something more. And so it's, yeah, find that tribe, connect with those women, maybe do that before even, find them, build a plan, get resourceful together, and just make this the new normal. Make it the new normal.